Imagine a teenager who could steal anything: houses, cars, yachts, and even planes. And this wasn't some action movie, it was real life. This boy, Colton Harris-Moore, became a legend and was hunted by the FBI since he was just 14 years old. What drove him to a life of crime, and how did he manage to stay ahead of the law for so long? Let's start from the beginning. Colton was born into a life of hardship. His mother was an alcoholic, and his father was a drug addict. They lived in a broken-down trailer on a small island near Washington, USA. With no money and no support, Colton had to fend for himself. He was often hungry, and that hunger pushed him into a life of theft. At first, he started by stealing food from local stores. But as he got older, his crimes became more daring. One day, Colton discovered that many of the houses on the island were vacation homes, empty most of the time. He figured out how to break in, not just to steal, but also to live there. He would raid the fridge, play video games, and sleep in these luxurious homes. But he never stayed in one place for long. He always managed to escape before getting caught. What made Colton even more dangerous was his growing skill set. He wasn't just stealing food anymore. He started taking valuables like cash, electronics, and even cars. He'd take a car, drive it around, clean it up, and return it without anyone knowing. And to make things worse, he once broke into a fire station to steal a high-tech camera used to detect people behind walls. This wasn't just a game for him. He was learning, preparing for bigger things. At just 15, Colton was arrested after a neighbor spotted him breaking into a house. But prison didn't change him. Instead, he used his time behind bars to study aviation. He read books, drew aircraft, and even practiced flying through video games. When he was finally released, Colton didn't reform. He became even more dangerous. Now 17, Colton escaped from juvenile detention by simply walking out through an open window. He returned to the forest, set up a tent, and resumed his life of crime. But this time, he wasn't just stealing cars and food. He had bigger plans. He wanted to fly a plane. Incredibly, after months of practice through flight simulators and reading stolen aviation manuals, Colton broke into a small airport, picked his plane, and flew it into the sky without ever having been on a plane before. But flying a plane without proper training came with risks. Colton crashed the aircraft but walked away with just a few bruises, disappearing into the woods before anyone could catch him. The police, FBI, and even military forces were now hunting him. But Colton always seemed to stay one step ahead. He moved from island to island, from state to state, stealing more planes, cars, and even boats. He gained a cult following on the internet, with fans calling him the Barefoot Bandit because he often committed his crimes barefoot. At one point, Colton even sailed to Canada, evading the Coast Guard and spending weeks living off the grid. His daring escapes made him a legend. But like all legends, his time eventually ran out. Colton's last grand escape took him to the Bahamas. He flew a stolen plane there, crash-landed, and immediately started robbing stores and restaurants to survive. But this time, the locals were ready for him. After a dramatic boat chase, Colton was finally caught. He tried to surrender in style, pointing a gun at himself and declaring he could never go back. But in the end, he gave up. After 2.5 years of running, Colton was finally arrested. His story, however, didn't end in the Bahamas. He was extradited to the United States, where he faced 67 charges across 3 countries. Though he could have been sentenced to 30 years in prison, Colton's lawyer managed to get him a much lighter sentence of 7 years. Colton's story is one of adventure, crime, and mystery. How did a teenager from a broken home outsmart police, FBI agents, and special forces? His tale has captivated people worldwide, but today, Colton claims he's left that life behind. Now he's trying to rebuild his life, hoping to share his story to help others avoid the path he took. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe the channel.